The following is a discussion with Owen Healy, one of the top talent recruiters in the blockchain industry. In this discussion, we talk about his own journey into crypto, advice that he might give others to break into this industry, and his own adventure in building his brand and the importance of marketing using pop culture and memes to more closely relate with his target audience on LinkedIn and other platforms. And now the interview. Enjoy.
Welcome back to another Arcane Adventures Boom Room podcast. Today, we're fortunate enough to speak to somebody who is synonymous with Web3 recruiting, somebody that's probably appeared all over your timeline on LinkedIn. I would like to give a warm welcome to Mr. Owen Healy. Welcome, Owen. How's it going today, man?
Thanks very much for having me on, guys. And look forward to getting to share some insights and share some stories over the next hour or so.
Yeah, glad to hear that. And I think you already know, you've probably seen a few episodes beforehand, but we are boring, and you've probably answered this a billion times, but we like to start every show asking people, what they did before they got into this wonderful industry that we work in, and also what first got you into this industry and pivoting away from your original path or career, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. So was my background. I guess worked in the horse racing industry for a number of years during my education, and then following that, worked in human resources for a number of years, and across various different industries, from construction to food to banking. And during the course of the COVID pandemic, I was unemployed with very few options at my disposal. And by default, rather than design, I found myself recruiting in Web3 effectively, and haven't really looked back since. I've been doing it best part of 3.5 years now, and thoroughly enjoy it, meeting people from all over the world, and attending conferences all over the world as well, and working for some great clients. It's been absolutely brilliant. And how I first found out about Bitcoin was a random Google search in 2014, and that was I suppose the system type attitude. Are we allowed curse here? I suppose that kind of attitude, that libertarian mindset, and separating money from state, I suppose that really appealed to me at the time. And I guess, however, I just didn't think it would catch on really. I followed it loosely for a year or two then, and kind of made a small investment then around the 2017 bull run. Hadn't really much money, to be honest, to splash on alts or Bitcoin, but pretty much like a gambler, I suppose. Around autumn of 2017, made a small investment, and by spring of 2018, I was all out. And and followed it, I guess, then for another 1.5 years, 2 years. And then just over the course of the COVID pandemic, as soon as I saw subsidy payments being issued left, right and centre, I just felt that Bitcoin had to work. And I properly did my research then. For about a month, night and day, I started reading various different books, both on the technology and on the philosophical side of things as well. And from then I was probably orange pilled ever since. So I guess I'm proud to say now that some of the stats that I have been held now for around 4 years now, which is great. And
Nice.
it's just I'm intrinsically motivated by what Bitcoin represents, and what what blockchain technology can do for the greater good of society overall. And I believe that both the proof of stake and proof of work worlds can coexist. So I'm not I'm not a maxi Bitcoiner, but I do. Again, that being said, there is a lot of EVM chains that I wouldn't be necessarily in love with.
It's a good way
But
to put it.
a crypto maxi,
Yeah,
absolutely. And it sounds like you've been properly red pilled, which is, it's a quite a common story, right? People see things going wrong in their day to day lives, and they see this technology, and they think, that could be a solution. But what blows my mind is that you didn't have any formal experience in recruiting before. You mentioned that you worked in the horse racing industry, and
yeah,
banking, like a number of other industries, and that's kind of crazy considering, Owen, when I think about like the top talent recruiters in the Web3 industry right now, you come to mind on this
yeah.
short list.
Okay.
And so what kind of like challenges have you seen in kind of breaking into that sort of industry and your current role and career?
Yeah, so I guess I would have worked in human resources whilst working in those industries. So with that, I would have built teams in house. Yeah. However, from an agency perspective, I had no recruitment agency experience, and I guess, to be honest with you, I still don't know what I'm really doing. To be honest, but I think that's worked to my advantage and disadvantage as well. So, for example, I see a lot of recruitment firms offer fees for like 20-25% to find a person for their team. And I just think that if you're a Web3 Series A startup that is trying to stretch a couple of million, maybe over 2 years, well, then spending a 25% premium or a 20% premium on a developer or a CMO, for example, that is huge. And I take pride in the fact that I don't charge a huge amount. My overheads are low, I suppose. I work here, I sleep there. Um, Great, and and
Yeah, I mean, those are
yeah.
standard fees in the world of recruitment.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Those
Like I
are
don't
those
have.
are really standard fees,
Mm,
and it does blow my mind. It's like, I
yeah.
mean, there's a lot of turnover in Web3. There are a
Oh
lot of
yeah.
people getting hired for companies, and then it's startups, so they hire fast, they fire fast. Maybe they
Mm.
shouldn't, but that incentivizes a lot of recruiters to just keep feeding them candidates at these ridiculously high fees. It's kind of a wild industry that we've been seeing, but you're taking a completely different approach, which is refreshing.
Yeah, well, I guess what I try and do to stand out is put a lot of effort into personal branding, and I see my LinkedIn page as kind of a community. And if you try and educate your community on LinkedIn, they'll invest in you. So I guess a lot of the when I reach out to candidates, a lot of them, dare I say it, already know me to some degree. And I guess a lot of prospective clients reach out to me saying, I've seen you post on LinkedIn, you seem to get it. And yeah, my posts seem to arouse their interest. So it's been a great from a marketing perspective, and also kind of getting candidates as well into my pipeline, the content. And it's much better than me reaching out to somebody and, you know, which I do obviously do, but I'd rather craft the perfect post to generate leads and candidates rather than reach out to people who may or may not be um, interested. But I guess in regards to, sorry, just going back to your question, yeah, there is a high turnover in Web3, but that's not necessarily the candidate's fault. I guess there's a lot, like the last bull market in particular, there was a lot of things done wrong, I would say. People were hired when they weren't necessarily needed to be hired. Um, for example, CMOs were hired, for example, when the project may not necessarily have needed a CMO. They might have needed a fractional CMO, for example. And yeah, projects, just as you rightly know, they got into bed with wrong market makers, wrong VCs,
Yeah.
blew their runway on stupid shit, and found themselves in poor treasury situations. And yeah, obviously, yeah. So again, and that's what I'm trying to do with a lot of my content now is there will be a lot of crazy salaries thrown out to experienced people over the next few months. And what I'm just trying to emphasize in my content is the grass isn't always greener on the other side. Um, if you're earning, say, for example, hypothetically 100K at the moment, and you get offered 150K a role, why would you want to accept that 150k role if if the chances are you may be unemployed in 6 months' time again and have to go back and look for another job? And yeah, again, obviously, you know as well as anyone that there's no such thing as job security in this industry. It's so you just have to constantly keep learning yourself and build security in your make kind of grow your own skill base so that how would I best say that your skills are transferable across multiple different projects, and that regardless of how bad a bear market is, that you'll be employable effectively, because there's no point in relying on a project for your income for 5 or 6 years. And yeah, like there's not many candidates in the Web3 world that can say that they lived their 4 year vesting schedule, is there?
Wow.
There isn't.
And the funny thing is, not all roles are created equal, and you might
Yeah.
work with some company like it's startup.
Oh yeah.
People mismanage things all the time. They miscommunicate things all the time. Maybe you go work for a company that has like the right processes in place. Maybe the C-suite is experienced in industries outside of Web 2 or Web 3, and they bring that experience in. And so you work what looks like a normal job. And then maybe you go to the same exact role by title for this company, and you're working 120 hours a week, and you don't have time for lunch. And so like yeah, it's completely different depending on where you're going to work. So it's a really good point
Yeah.
that you make. And it's not all about that number, which I know
No.
in the world of tech startup, a lot of people, they measure their worth by that number, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, like again, like there is like the sad reality is that if you want to work in a lot of Web3 startups being startups, you just have to make sacrifices, and it is high risk, high reward, obviously, in terms of job security. But again, you do have to, again, work-life balance is something that, yeah, sometimes has to be compromised, dare I say it. And yeah, it's just the nature of the industry, I suppose. You do have to. I find you have to be intrinsically motivated to succeed if you're working in a Web3 startup, because everyone is super passionate, and yeah, it's just the way it is, unfortunately. And thankfully, there is a level of maturity coming into the space, and the management of projects, most projects, is getting better and more human focused as well. And over the last 3 years, I've noticed more people processes coming into the space, and more educational programs being offered within projects, better onboarding. So like the space is improving, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
I wanted to ask too before. I mean, you mentioned the bear market, and you said job security is a big thing, and people, why would you take that higher number if you're going to lose your job in 6 months? And the same can be said for you. Also, like your job gets exponentially harder once there's a lack of homeostasis in the job market. So I remember seeing last year all these exchanges and big companies laying hundreds and hundreds of people off, and all of a sudden you have a lot of supply and you don't have a whole lot of demand for roles. So makes your job harder. And was it difficult? And did you learn any specific lessons over the last bear market?
Yeah, I was close to setting up a Patreon page last year. Yeah. No. Oh, sorry. No.
Perfect
No.
timing.
Yeah. No. I guess last year was difficult, but it was much more difficult for a lot of other people in the industry, and I suppose fair play to everyone who did survive through it, and kept on hustling, I suppose. It was challenging. I guess one ecosystem that really helped me survive through the bear market was the Cosmos ecosystem. Did a number of
Hmm.
good hires within the Cosmos ecosystem, thankfully, and then did some hires with projects like Mel, for example, and um, a Web3 studio. So no, I guess yeah, the bear market was a lot difficult for a lot of other people, but it was like yeah, no, it was challenging. And I guess what is great about now is that candidates are growing in confidence. They're appreciating their own worth, and I guess, for example, I go back to the example of a CMO. If I had a 80k CMO role last year, I could, yes, it's guaranteed that I'd know 15 people straight away that would be interested. And the reason why I know they'd be interested is because I know that there was very few other CMO type roles. And yeah, yeah, when there's very little there, of course, they're going to go other options, of course. But now they're being a lot more kind of selective and trying to see, does this project identify with me more? And yeah, they're also kind of not going to work for the same salary that they might have considered working for last year, for example, as well. So yeah, no, it's great to see candidates growing in confidence as well, and it's a great time. Like last year was a great time to hire because the wealth of talent out there actively looking,
Mm.
and in some cases, dare I say it, desperate as well. It was incredible, like to think of it now. Yeah, so I guess what I would, and on the flip side to that, and I know I'm kind of going on, but on the flip side to that, I would say that any project that hired somebody last year during the depths of the bear market should probably look at the compensation maybe of the person that they hired then now, because that person is going to get substantially better offers thrown at them.
Oh
And
wow.
I'm speaking non-technical. I'm speaking marketers,
Yeah.
product people, BD people, community professionals. Yeah, so
This
this
is
industry is either a
this
feast
is
or a
really
famine.
interesting. You know, you this is actually a really interesting sort of piece of alpha, or even
Okay.
just like insight into the market movements, and you have a very, very interesting viewpoint into what's happening in the markets, because on the people front, the people resources front, um, you're able to gain a better understanding of like how the markets work really based on the needs of all these like aggregate companies. And you know, just like the salary thing apart, you know, I want to ask just one question. Like this might be a stupid question because maybe I know the answer already, but what are some of the biggest differences in needs that you see companies pursuing in the bear market versus like the bull market? I'm wondering if we'll be surprised, because the Cosmos comment kind of threw me off a little bit.
Okay. I'm not sure why the Cosmos comment kind of put you off, but yeah, no, there was just yeah, it was the Cosmos ecosystem. Yeah, funnily enough, the Electric Capital report um did say that there was less people working within the Cosmos ecosystem last year compared to 2022. But from my perspective, there seemed to be a good lot of hiring happening within that ecosystem. So yeah, I guess with respect to compare and contrast, I guess that cliche, the bear markets are for building, and yeah, I guess that's what happened really. I suppose those projects that could survive and thrive effectively got down to building. They made do with the resources that they had, and yeah, that's pretty much it, I guess. And even from a, you know, I think that from a, even going to a few conferences last year as well, there was a lot of companies were working together and seeing how they could effectively collaborate with each other and find synergies rather than compete. So yeah, a lot of good came from the bear market. Yeah.
Do you ever?
So
That's a good question. I was wondering, do you ever feel like you just want to jam together two or three companies that are doing the same thing? There's no need for them to exist or compete. Like sometimes I see one company hiring, they're like, "Oh, I'm looking for a co-founder, a COO," or and then I see another team looking for another co-founder, and I just want to combine these teams because there's no need for there to be this many companies, I think, and that's one of the issues with hiring. There's too many companies hiring that are not going to be in business 6 months from now, even in a bull market.
I don't know, maybe not 6 months, but definitely not 6 years anyway. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
it's just the reality of the industry, I suppose. Yeah, they're like even things like the layer two space, for example, like that is kind of ridiculous. And yeah, no, just the amount of competition, and yeah. But anyway, we could have a big debate about the VC world and whatnot, I suppose, on that front. But anyway,
Hey,
Yeah.
I want to ask you, Owen, like going back to the idea of like who's building and what they're
mm.
building for. Um, there's so many layer ones that have come to market in the
Oh yeah.
past 12 months that seem to be competing. Are any of them hiring? Like Sui, Aptos, Say, or any of these guys, like in comparison to the larger market, how are they doing from your perspective?
Yeah, so a lot of my client base would be actually Europe. However, um, yeah, during the bear market, actually, Aptos and Sui were hiring. I wasn't working on those accounts myself, but yeah, they were hiring, and yeah, they seem to be offering attractive salaries, and it'll be. I guess I see with a lot of these layer ones that they go through this kind of honeymoon period. I'd love to know your perspective, but to go through these honeymoon periods of maybe 12 to 18 months there of them being the next best thing, and then it's after that those 18 months that there's an asset test, and then you see kind of really what they're about, and yeah, what their community is about, and kind of if there any actual progress being made. So I don't know, I'd love to know, like, yeah, so that's my
I
perspective.
think
That's my, yeah.
I
Sorry.
think a lot of them are operating under the assumption of if you build it, they will come, and
Yeah,
that doesn't seem to be the case in a lot of these scenarios. And so what has been interesting is seeing a lot of these layer ones compete in a very competitive space, and they all seem to be doing the same thing. But what's interesting is some layer ones that are very very narrative driven and specific, like IoTex or Peak, for example. They know what they are. They know who they're going after. They know that they're going to cater towards the IoT market or the Internet of Things or
hmm,
DePIN. And then the network sort of like, kind of just caters to that as far as like the characteristics of the consensus mechanism or the tech. But like Aptos, Sui, a lot of these guys, I know they're trying to differentiate themselves being more enterprise, maybe more finance focused, but from my perspective, like a lot of them functionally do the same thing. So it really comes down to like the business development and the
yeah,
partnerships that they make and the adoption
uh,
that they're able to push.
I
And
think,
that's very difficult.
yeah, absolutely,
you
and the
know,
communities behind them to a large degree as well, and yeah, the advocate people advocating for those projects as well. Like, yeah, see, like for example, at the Avalanche Summit, the amount of the amount of people that were there just to support their mission, I thought was absolutely fantastic last year. So yeah, yeah, no, I think yeah, building a tribe is hugely important as well.
I think where the space is taking like a big VC minded mindset still, and I think we're about to make some content in the next few weeks about some of these ridiculous node sales going on, where some of these layer ones and twos are raising hundreds of millions of dollars, like literally over $100 million, when some other competitors are raising maybe 10 million. And you would think that they would maybe make some grants. Grants are typically the way to like attract builders to your ecosystem.
Mm,
Like Cosmos is only as good as the layer one chains that it has in its hub. But actually, maybe going back to what we've been talking about, the only way to they know how to compete is to poach the top talent and show flashy names on the pitch deck, like, oh, we stole or poached this talent from Facebook or Meta or Google or whatever.
Hot take.
So I think that's probably why they're raising so much money, among other things. But the only thing I can think of is how do you compete in the space if you want to be the preeminent layer one launching in 2024? You have to pay high salaries and have top talent to show off on your investor documents.
absolutely, yeah, and like again, I remember hiring during the last bull market, where one or two of the projects that I worked with, it became clear that they were kind of looking for as much of a marquee signing as opposed to a top class engineer, for example. And yeah, like that will come back. You will see like kind of retail recruitment or snobbery where they want the Amazon logo or the top 100 from Coin Market Cap logo to a company or a pitch deck,
Oh no.
for when they race further. It hasn't happened yet, but it will happen as the bull market persists. Absolutely.
Owen,
History
in
doesn't
that
repeat, but it rhymes, you know.
Yeah.
in that same breath, like, have you have you ever encountered a company looking to make a hire of just like a nobody or like a non-employee just based off of the logos they can use from their past experience?
No, but it becomes obvious like that it has a huge with some projects that I've worked with previously, not at the moment, thankfully. And but previously it did become obvious that there was um it did play a huge factor in whether they would consider someone going forward. And there was one project in particular about 2 or 3 years ago where I was was asked to hire a, a top class Rust engineer, and I threw like I really went for it now in terms of hire, sending the best talent. But yeah, they were looking for people, unicorns from the likes of, they were looking for the likes of Gavin Wood and whatnot that just weren't available, you know. It's like fucking crazy. Like,
That's wild. I mean, and it's even wilder to consider like really there's one main reason why they might be doing that to get logos in their pitch deck, which is maybe I can pay this person 200K a year salary, but leverage that logo to raise 5-10 million dollars. So
yeah.
it's a little bit scary to hear that this might be actively happening. So all the investors out there watching, stay safe.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think going back, there's so many things to talk about, but one of the things I wanted to ask, it's actually like a twofold question, but what are the main differences, in your past experience hiring outside of crypto or Web3, compared to hiring in Web3? And then also, what are the main differences hiring for like a new startup with a small core team versus an established company that's already brought in funding, they already know what they're doing, they have a onboarding and everything. They know what they're looking for. But what are the main differences between those four subclasses? Let's call it.
Okay, so they're two completely different questions. I suppose the first question, the first question, I worked in house. My any recruitment experience I had in Web two per se was done in house. So so they were for big organizations, and I was working with the hiring manager directly, sitting beside him or
Mhm.
her, who'd be managing that person effectively on a daily basis. Uh, and ultimately, I'd be working with that person then on a daily basis as well. So yeah, obviously, and working as an agent now. Um, so so with respect to the other question, so you mentioned like, I suppose, oh, good question. I guess it really does depend on the project, regardless of what size it is. I suppose everyone looks
Mhm.
to see someone that's passionate and willing to work, and someone that comes to calls prepared, and obviously has the right experience. It's really difficult question to answer. I guess what I would say is that yeah, I guess I suppose there is kind of early stage startups within the space that are looking maybe for more of a generalist type profile. And as the project grows and scales and matures, then a
Mhm.
little bit further, it becomes more and more specialized in terms of the skill set that they require. But that is a very that is a very it's a very simplistic answer to give you.
No, that's fine. I mean, that's about what I expected. But for instance, I imagine you have to get a little bit more creative with compensation packages. Perhaps the onus is more on the company than you. But if you're an established company, you're going to have your typical benefits aside from the salary. But startups, you're probably going to be talking about equity in the company or tokens or whatever. So they have to get a little bit more creative if you're
Oh yeah.
have any hope to compete with more established companies. And I think there's this weird chicken and the egg situation that we see also as service providers, where how can you possibly charge a company, or how can a company hire when they don't have any funding yet? And how can you get funding if you don't have a team that can support you in your fundraising goals? So Is that a big issue too, where some of the companies you work with, like they're not able to pay, or they're not able to hire somebody directly or immediately with an actual salary or
Well,
paycheck?
if they weren't able to pay, I wouldn't be helping them. That's kind of the reality of the situation, isn't it? So,
Yeah.
yeah, I guess it's a fully loaded question that you've asked me, but I guess to on the startup side, there is a lot of projects now looking for um, uh, what would be often titled as founding engineer,
Hmm.
whereas back in the last bull cycle it would have been titled as a senior blockchain engineer. But yeah, or effectively a CTO, effectively. Um, now when it's a now how can I see like for the stage and early stage startup is at, a founding engineer is a much more appropriate title, for example, than a CTO, for example. So yeah, like again, that comes back to what I mentioned earlier. There's a maturity about the space, and even job title changes like that, from CTO to founding engineer, are examples of that. But yeah, and then when it's a founding engineer, the title automatically assumes that okay, there'll be strong equity here. There is a risk involved, but the upside could be absolutely huge. And
Hmm.
yeah, and yeah, and yeah, obviously, I think that even some of the top layer ones that I've worked with, and some of the well-known DeFi projects that I've worked with, um, the one thing about Web3 is that, as an industry, is that a lot of founders are always, and hiring managers, is that they can be very creative in crafting deals as well. So if there's a discrepancy on salary, they can do a vesting schedule, they can do bonuses if they really, really want to somebody. So
Hmm.
yeah, and again, funnily enough, uh, in the bull market, it often felt easier to get a CMO or a CTO a job at 150K, for example. But then the real negotiations might come when they were negotiating the vesting schedule. Whereas now cash is still king, and I think
Yeah.
that like things were mad back in 2021, early 2022, where yeah, now cash is still king, and the vesting schedule is seen as something that may well make me millions, but we're not relying on it, or we're not expecting it. That's kind of the attitude that I've noticed. Yeah.
Yeah, I think
And then back then,
one of the takeaways is that it could also make you no money, and that's why people are probably more cautious, and that's why cash is still king, because
mm,
it's more of a sure thing. But that's an interesting point too you made. Just to go off on a side tangent, we had a client that was asking us about hiring for marketing, and they were going after CMO, but they have a few people on the team, and we told them maybe it's better and more appropriate to hire a social media manager or a digital marketer first. Give them room to grow in that position instead of hiring, swinging for the fences, and hiring like a C-level executive, where you're obviously going to have a bigger compensation package, and they're more of a co-founder and not like a core team member. So that's something that's a good lesson and a takeaway from last market. Like you said, it was mad. Uh, is there any other lessons you think teams or founders are picking up on? Like I think, for example, we saw a lot of aggressive scaling a few years ago. Do you think anybody's learned this lesson about hiring only when you need to, and how to do that appropriately? Like when is the right time to hire, for example?
So when is the right time to hire is a very difficult question, because it depends on where your project is at and whether you need the people or not. As alluded to, the there was a lot of hires being made for the sake of hiring back in the last bull market, just getting people in the door, in case we might need them, or anticipation that we will need them at a later date. Um, so again, it really does depend on your needs or circumstances, and again, what I do notice at the moment is that there is a lot of projects out there forecasting when they'll need someone, whereas that was largely non-existent back in the day. So I have people telling me
Yeah.
that in Q3 I'll need people. In the next month or two, I will need people. I'm currently working on 6 Solidity roles for one particular client at the moment. They won't be interviewing for another 3 weeks or so. And yeah, things like that were non-existent back in the say back in the last cycle, for example, when they needed people, they wanted them as soon as possible, effectively. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. This is interesting. I wanted to ask you, Owen, because you brought up a really funny point about companies trying to hire founding members. And it's really funny when you think about in the world of tech startup, how fundamental the actual tech is. Like it's the most important thing in the company. Yet a lot of times you see founders who are kind of like they have an idea and they have a concept and maybe they want to figure out how do I build a company around this, and but they don't have any sort of technical literacy. And so the idea is like let me offload all of the actual the productive work to this other individual. And it brought up something funny that I saw in the last year. A couple of situations where people reached out to me asking, "Hey, can you help me find a co-founder? I need to hire a co-founder." Have you run into that? And what's your take on the idea of hiring a co-founder?
It's a bit more challenging than finding a senior engineer, for example. It is, and there's no point in saying otherwise. A lot of recruitment firms that will be asked to look for a founder, for example, or a co-founder, for example, might ask for a small retainer fee so that they're not doing the work for nothing, because they do take a lot of work finding a co-founder. And a lot of time it can be about, look, who's in your pipeline at one particular given moment in time that is open to work and is open to new opportunities. And yeah, just thinking of the co-founder role that I filled last year, that's exactly how that happened. It was somebody that happened to be out of work that was met the needs of the project that was being built, and it was just perfect timing. And looking for a co-founder, for example, I would say that um, obviously you should go to the hackathons. Yeah, go to ECC, go to Dev Connect, whatever, and try and find that person and build rapport with that person and get to know them as individuals. Also, heavily lean in upon the ecosystem that you're building in as well. So if you're building on Avalanche or Algorand or whatever, um, yeah, try and leverage your network within that ecosystem and try and find builders within that ecosystem that you believe might be able to help you. And yeah, that's probably as good a way rather than using your recruiter in many respects.
Mm. I do want to ask as well, Owen, because I'm sure many founders have this question if they're in this similar situation, and they could benefit greatly by hearing it directly from you, someone that's seen it and that's done it before. Like, what would you think is appropriate to offer a co-founder if you were to bring someone onto your project, or a CTO to lead the entire development of your product?
Uh, yeah, so that's a great question. And obviously, I guess the first thing is I would, if you're hiring a founding engineer or a CTO, just try and be honest with them and say, listen, things are pretty much from scratch. You don't want a psychological contract violation in the first couple of weeks within a project, because then the project will be back to square one again, and you'll have soured what could have been a very fruitful relationship. But on a more transactional level, offer good equity. If you really believe in the person long term, if trying to find a founder, just be honest with them from the outset, and then from a transactional level, negotiate the, maybe look at maybe salary reviews after a certain time period or after certain milestones, and have a good vesting schedule as well. So really make that person feel like he or she has skin in the game going forward. And don't be afraid to meet up with that person face to face and see if there's a good rapport between you and them as well going forward. I know we're working in a remote first industry, and that's fantastic, but um, there's like some of the best connections that I've gotten in Web3, some of the best clients that I've received, and some of the best candidates that I've met that mightn't have much of a presence on LinkedIn, for example, I've met at conferences. So yeah.
Hmm. Wow. That's fantastic advice. It's funny because I never thought of the idea of people hiring founding members or co-founders without having met them before. But it does make sense. Of course, that happens here. It just seems like such a big leap of faith when you think about how closely you're going to have to work with that person. So honestly, fantastic advice.
Yeah, well, like you're going to war with that person effectively, aren't you? I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, every day.
And you're basically asking that person to eat glass for you, and with the slim chance of the project becoming successful. So yeah.
Ooh, slim chance. Hot take.
Yeah, I wanted to ask too. This is probably like the question I'm most eager and excited to talk about, and it's like you can endlessly debate this. But do you think it's easier to, let's say you're a marketer or a developer, and you're top at what you do, and you're coming from a traditional company? Is it easier to hire somebody like that in Web three that doesn't know anything about Web three, or is it easier to hire somebody that isn't maybe a top marketer that's just learning marketing but knows everything about Web3, knows everything about crypto or NFTs or whatever? What's is it typically easier to hire somebody from traditional companies or somebody that already knows Web3? Like I imagine I know my answer or my feeling about it, but I wanted to hear your take.
Again, it depends on the stage of the project, for example, where they're at in their own development. So if it's a more mature blue chip project, they'll be more receptive to taking on very strong Web 2 profiles. And
Hmm.
then if it's a startup, for example, they want Web 3 natives, they want people to be able to speak the language of the fellow Web 3 enthusiasts. So yeah, and I guess with that as well, uh, for like whether it's with a top tier layer one, for example, or a with a top tier layer one, or whether it's an early stage startup you want to join. Like if you are coming from a good position in Web two, there is that sense that you just have to take off the golden handcuffs, for example. Um, if you have a good job in Web two, because again, there is a huge learning curve in terms of the culture, the language, um, the pace of change, and as well as that, obviously, you have to on a more basic level. There's things like if you're, yeah, like things like health insurance, for example, aren't often covered. A lot of contracts are done on business to business basis, for example, as well. So yeah, there's a whole range of things to consider. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I'm guessing it's different from role to role too. Like a
Oh
developer
yeah.
maybe is able to pick up a new coding language quite easily, whereas I've heard, especially with marketing, that oh,
Mhm.
you're a good marketer, you understand uh, click funnels and email marketing, but you don't understand Web3 community building. And it's kind of funny, like imagining that you can't really learn that easily. It's not that hard of a concept to grasp. So
Yeah.
yeah, I
And
guess
that
the natural follow up there. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, that's why I kind of encourage a lot of people to effectively get experience before they join the space as well. So help out a project maybe pro bono that they're
Hmm.
interested in, or within an ecosystem that they're interested in. Not only are they getting connections and building credibility within the space, but they're also getting to understand the culture as well. So that's a huge part. So you actually, it's not something that you can't read about Web3 in a textbook necessarily. You kind of have to live it, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely.
I think, yeah, so a natural follow up to that, I mean, that's a great piece of advice that I hadn't considered. And you mentioned something similar about Cosmos. Like sometimes you just have to just jump in and get involved with the community you like and become involved and learn that way, not in a classroom setting. But I wanted to ask, is there any programs you would recommend or easier ways to onboard people into Web3 that maybe are formidable marketers or developers or operational people, product managers that want to get in Web3 but have no idea where to look or how to start?
Yeah, so I guess For developers, I guess the Patrick Collins Foundry course is a good starting point. It's yeah, it's on YouTube. It's been watched
Hmm.
hundreds and hundreds of thousands of times, and yeah, that would be one great source for developers in particular. Um, if you're a QA, for example, um, perhaps maybe just even go on Code Arena, for example, and just read some audit reports, for example, and obviously do the Patrick Collins Foundry course as well. And then there's the like for maybe anyone that's anyway non-technically minded or even technically minded, the University of Nicosia program as well. I've often posted about it, and I'm not affiliated with the university, but it's believe it or not, but it's a free 12-week program that um, yeah, gives people a thorough understanding of the basics of blockchain, and yeah, at a very, very high level. But it also gives people who completed a certificate of completion on the Bitcoin blockchain as well. So there's a novel feature as well. It's
Hmm.
free of charge. It's a 12-week program, a couple of hours a week, good overall understanding to the space, and yeah, happy days. Yeah, like
Yeah, that,
it's better than any kind of random Udemy course, because you know the logo of the University of Nicosia would be a huge selling factor in helping you get a Web 2 job that's maybe looking at blockchain solutions or in fact a blockchain project itself.
yeah, that was the one I actually had in mind when I asked that question. But
Okay.
it's good to see that they're doing good things, and yeah, it's important because it gives you this kind of level of confidence when you go to apply to your first Web3 job. Maybe it's not going to make or break a hire, but it definitely makes you feel confident that you actually know what you're doing and you know where to look for more information if you want to get better at your job or research or learn more. So that's a really interesting shout, and I think it's very important that people hear this, how they can improve, because there's so many people wanting to work in Web3 and they have no idea where to start. So those are all very good points.
Hmm. Yeah, you made a really interesting point about the audits as well. People reach out to me all the time about where they can learn more about tokenomics, and there's a number of sources, and there's a number of individuals that make great content, and it's been staring me in the face. I can't believe I missed it since you said it, because a lot of the ways that Carmelo and I learned about many of the concepts in Web3 is just reading white papers and reading and reading and reading white papers. And then we give that advice a lot, but we never tell people to read tokenomics audits. There's a lot out there that are readily available. And I think that gives really interesting insight into how people are criticizing them, so it can help you learn what to look for. So that's fantastic advice, really. But on the same note about breaking into Web3, we've seen LinkedIn evolve into such a powerful platform for this industry. And to your credit, you've done very, very well marketing yourself on LinkedIn. And it's funny because when I think about like Web3 hiring, I think of two places. Number one, companies or projects or founding teams poaching community members from Telegram, or number two, finding people on LinkedIn and hiring them. And so LinkedIn is this like, it's still this like primary place of where you can maybe get hired. But LinkedIn's got problems. Not every platform is perfect. From your perspective, do you see anything else happening in this space as far as like a platform coming out and competing, something maybe Web3 focused or even just better that's talent focused in general? Because it seems like LinkedIn is currently the juggernaut where many people are living in this talent marketplace.
So LinkedIn is kind of the best out there, to be honest. That's undeniable. They're yeah, like the Web3 solutions that just are not ready yet, and probably won't be for another couple of years, unfortunately. Um, However, yeah, like there is a serious, yeah, like there is a serious, yeah, like LinkedIn probably do need competition. There's no point saying that because the user experience often leaves a lot to be desired. And yeah. it's a pity because it's a platform with relatively modest investment could do an awful lot more. Um, and yeah, yeah, it's a pity really. But like Twitter are looking at maybe help it, like they've kind of hinted at X hiring over the last year or so, where people can apply for jobs via Twitter. And if they could maybe, if Twitter, I don't know obviously what they're thinking, but if they could integrate Twitter accounts and have a separate maybe page, maybe that should be kind of more reflective of personal professional experiences, that could be like completely separate with a separate tab, or so, I don't know, but there is a lot of potential there, I would imagine, if they looked at that. But um yeah, no, LinkedIn is still the goat and will probably be so for the next number of years. Yeah, but it's, yeah, no, it is what it is. But yeah, I don't know how to answer your question.
No, it's great. It's just funny how there's like, it's the same with Telegram, this one
Mm,
singular company that drives so much of the industry. And you see
yeah,
that everywhere really. And much of finance is driven by, its roots in Microsoft Excel, a private company developing a single product. It's just funny how these, so many industries build around these products because they're so useful. And so understanding like there is a gap. There are areas of improvement that can be made if a real competitor were to come to LinkedIn. And I remember speaking with a lead developer from LinkedIn when I was visiting Sonoma in California, and he was telling me, yeah, I left that company last year. You wouldn't believe how much of a mess it is. Like on the development front, everything, it's like there's lagging, and it seems like they're ignoring the product. And funny enough, I personally feel like I've noticed that in the social algorithm that governs engagement across posts. I've noticed a number of people creating the same copy pasta crap on their social
mm,
media posts on LinkedIn, the same format, one line, and
yeah,
they're telling everybody nothing, but still
yeah,
somehow they're just milking this machine and getting
yeah,
100 likes per post
yeah.
versus what you're really doing, right? So there seems to be a lot of things that you can improve on.
Definitely. Yeah, no, and like even like for example, I did a post this morning that required minimal effort. And it's already after getting about 20,000 impressions, whereas I did a post yesterday that required a couple of hours effort, and it's only on 4,000 impressions. But that's such as life, I guess. But I guess when it comes to LinkedIn, reach is important, but you want people digesting the content as well. So those 4,000 impressions that I probably got in the post yesterday will go a lot further for me in terms of a business sense than the 20,000 that I got in the post today, for example. Uh, so yeah, like again, I've spoken to a lot of these so-called LinkedIn influencers that have thousands and thousands of followers, and a lot of them having a pot to piss in, like, in terms of, and I'm not trying to be disrespectful in saying that, but like it is a business platform. You are trying to, like, the ultimate goal is to build relationships, create off-chain relationships, showcase your value, but also then offer that value in the real world outside of LinkedIn. And like again, if you're just focused on posting circle jerk content the whole time, like those people, like whilst they might like your stuff, they might, do they want to do business with you is another question entirely.
Mm, yeah,
That's a good point.
absolutely.
And like,
Yeah.
but like posting on LinkedIn is absolutely fantastic for my career, and it's changed my life. And like I'm doing a job that I love thanks to LinkedIn as well. So I'm forever grateful for that. And how I'm still able to do it and do it, I think, fairly well is because of the content that I produce and put time into it. And the reason why I remember connecting with Carmelo is in the first place was because I remember seeing a post of his that I actually really digested. It was about how partnerships in Web3 were basic. A lot of them were bullshit. It was it Chainlink and Taco Bell? I think it was. No, yeah, it's like, and I remember some random guy posted then. if that's the case, I'm in a partnership with Pornhub, he said. I was like fucking, no, but like, it's like, but like, that's an extreme example, but that was somebody else that commented that. But what, yeah, kind of, it got that post got me thinking like how a lot of these so-called partnerships in Web3 are. And ever since then, I've been looking forward to seeing kind of what you have been posting, and that's what I mean. Like, people have to, if you want to be building a successful personal brand, you need the people not just to be clicking on the stuff and commenting on the stuff, but also digesting the stuff and thinking about it then. And that was a great
Absolutely.
post, Carmelo. Yeah.
Thank you.
No,
That
but
was a
just
legendary post.
it was like
No,
we're partnering with
you're absolutely
finance.
right.
Our co-founder has an account there. You know, it's like, yeah. I must actually try and find it again, but yeah, it's fantastic. Yeah.
You're right too, because I think that post took all of 5 minutes, and it was like I think it got like 40, 60,000 impressions. Where sometimes I'll just write a post for an hour, I'll make a nice graphic, and I'll think about it, and then it'll get no views, no likes, and there's this inequality of how much time you put in and how much effort and how much value you get out of it. But like you said, such is life.
Yeah, but like there was an authenticity about that post, like you were being honest, and that struck a chord with a lot of people. And
Yeah,
that's what LinkedIn, like, if you're even being honest on LinkedIn, like, and like just speaking your mind, like a lot, that'll give you a head start over probably 80 or 90% of content creators on the platform.
yeah. Not to
Mm.
mention, there's a lot of chat GPT going on there, and there's a lot. You can tell it's literally not authentic, and it's not rooted in anything. Like a lot of these posts are inspired. Like I'll hop off a call. Me and Sasha will be on a call talking to somebody, and it'll remind me of something that's absurd about an industry. And then 5 minutes later, I'll hop on LinkedIn, write something right away as soon as it's fresh in my mind. And yeah, it's coming from a real place, and not really meant to sell people on anything either. Just to put something out there into the world. And I we get a lot of I think we have a lot of writers in our community, especially from like Nigeria or Philippines or India that are trying to break into the industry, and they have a hard time. Sometimes they'll directly message me and ask me, how do you get jobs as a writer? How do you do that? And I tell them, create content. Like, you need to
Mm.
build your own brand, you need to create content, you need to have opinions. You can't just mirror what other people say. You have to, whether it's controversial or not, whether you just have to have conviction and actually believe it, and then write about it and practice your craft. So I see that you're doing that. I think all three of us here understand that, but it's probably the best thing you can do aside from your recommendations on how to break into the industry is just start building your brand and
Yeah.
putting content out there, whether it's video or articles or LinkedIn posts, doesn't matter.
Yeah, no, and yeah, like just do it consistently as well, and
Yeah.
yeah, no, 100%. It's like, again, it is a globally distributed, remote first world, and yeah, definitely, yeah,
Yeah. Funny enough, this is what brings us a lot of attention, and not only attention from founders seeking investment, but also attention from founders seeking advisory support, because people oftentimes they relate with their problems that they might be facing or challenges that they're encountering, and so seeing that on LinkedIn and a social media post helps them understand, oh, these guys have seen it, they've done it before, I want to work with them. And so that's exactly right. You can use these tools to break into the industry and kind of communicate your relatable experience to your companies that you want to work with. And so it's been incredible watching you do this on a day-to-day
yeah,
basis with your experience, and always fun speaking to people that are that have this sort of experience outside of Web3 but brought it in, because that's the name of the game. That's adoption
yeah,
at the end of the day.
no, one hundred
And
percent.
so
And even there's one guy that I like, even like, his name is David Fernandez, and yeah, he effectively
name
carved out.
dropping.
Yeah, no, but he effectively carved out a very good career for himself in DevRel. He was a marketer turned developer, and effectively he did his LinkedIn like a learning journal, effectively, and then followers came, and then he started articulating his learnings, and yeah, built a community around him, and is doing very well. But that's kind of the power of LinkedIn as well. And even if you're very new to the space, share your learning journeys and give yourself a goal of learning a couple of new things every day, and articulate, and over time then you'll be able to formulate opinions of your own, and happy days then after that.
100%, man. And well, we've got to wrap this up. But before we do, Owen, we want to ask you a question that we ask everyone on here, and so it's quite simple. It's been first and foremost amazing having you on. Amazing speaking about your perspective in the world of Web3 talent acquisition, your perspective in the world of marketing yourself and your services, and most importantly, reaching people, getting that message across. And so we're going to wrap this up with one last fun question. Again, like I said, something we ask everybody. What are you most bullish on in this industry? And it could be a person, place, a thing, anything, except for you and your own business, which I think is kind of, I don't know how you'd fit that in
Yeah,
this episode, anyways.
I guess what I'm most bullish about is what I've been most bullish about this industry for the last number of years is that it's a bottom up industry, um, and with that, I guess it accelerates the democratization of labor markets globally. So, for example, engineers in Brazil or Pakistan, for example, were often sweatshop devs for major US corporations for many, many years in Web 2, and Web 3 is giving them the sovereignty in a lot of instances to be their own person and break out on their own. And yeah, again, it's like like, for example, Brazil being it's a fantastic, Brazil in particular is a great source of Golang and Solidity engineers, for example. And guess what? I can, the remote first nature of the industry means that a developer, a good Solidity or blockchain developer in Brazil can command a much higher salary than they would earn in the local market, which is absolutely fantastic. And unlike in years gone by where they might have had to relocate to Silicon Valley or somewhere, now they can work in their own location and they can contribute to their local economies as well. And yeah, I would say that for most disciplines, the Web3 salaries are higher and there's less of an emphasis. It's largely about proof of skill rather than proof of place. And I just find that very empowering. And
Hmm.
it really motivates me to do my job as well. So that's what I'm bullish about. But yeah, like obviously bullish about Bitcoin as well. And yeah, but then that's another
I was
story.
going to say,
Yeah.
that's such a better answer than Solana. So I
Yeah.
appreciate that. That's exactly what we want to hear. It's we're creating a more equitable landscape. So awesome. And before we wrap it up, everyone, thanks for watching. Make sure you check out the show notes if you want to get in touch with Owen. You're seeking how to break into the cryptocurrency or Web3 industry. He's the perfect person to help you do that. And once again, Owen, it's been an absolute
Yeah. Of
pleasure
course.
bringing you on, speaking with you. Make sure you guys like and subscribe. We got more Boom Room interviews coming, more on chain analytics videos coming, more investor eye tests coming. And until then, thank you again. Stay safe out there, y'all. Ciao.